We don't want to be in a scenario where 20 years from now, somebody says, I do parkour, and they're like, what? That's crazy, you know? That's probably a bad sign.
If you fall, if something goes off, and if you fall, this drop is going to be life-altering, if not life-ending.
Any physical scenario they find themselves in, I'd rather them be strong and capable than weak and scared.
You know how we often talk about age and getting older, like particularly on this program?
Because we're a couple old guys?
Well, relatively, I think particularly to a lot of our listeners who might be more sensitive to us calling ourselves old, we're not that old. We're not that old. We're old, like, relative to maybe, I think, what we in our heads imagine the typical parkour demographic of, like, a not even 20 yet male.
Yeah, true. But I also think that we're old relative to, like, what our, like, athletic peak is.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I athletically peaked, like, in my mid to late 20s, and now I'm kind of slowly trying to slow the decline as much as possible, but yeah.
So yesterday, what I was going to say is that I typically don't actually feel old in terms of doing parkour. In terms of training, I don't actually, like, it doesn't register when I'm doing parkour. And I think sometimes you'll even hear guys, like, in their mid to late 20s be like, oh, I'm getting old because, like, you know, they don't recover from something very well or whatever. And that just hasn't happened to me. Yesterday, I started to kind of feel it a bit. And part of the reason is I was out having a sesh with Seth, who I did the math, and I'm 21 years older than.
How old is he, 17? Yeah, that sounds about right.
And there was a point where we were looking at a cat back, and I did one tester and took the drop, and I was like, ugh. And then he proceeded to do a bunch of testers and was just perfectly fine. And so there was that moment, but then also I was just kind of thinking about how I've been planning my training lately, and I'm trying to increase the volume again. I haven't been able to, like, reach what I would say, like, the volume I want of training in some years due to injuries. And I don't know if I'm going to actually hit what I want to in terms of volume, because of the amount of, and this could just be coming off of haven't had, like, a great week of training. Like, I've done the sessions I've wanted to do, but just hasn't felt great. So maybe I'll give another update next week to see, like, you know, if I turn around. But yeah, yesterday was, I think, just because of the contrast there with Seth, was, like, one of the first sessions where, like, it actually hit me, like, physically. Yeah. Where I felt old physically.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, anytime, like, we travel to jams or whatever, I always feel my age.
So that's culturally.
Yeah, culturally. I've been feeling my age for a while physically, to be honest. It definitely takes longer to warm up, and it's like and I have to warm up to begin with, whereas when I was younger, it was just kind of like, oh, I'm totally cold, I'm gonna one-shot this, you know, and just like go at it. But I definitely feel like, ooh, I don't want to take that drop right now. So here we are, well into our 30s. This is parkour.
Yeah. All right. So into today's topic, which also has to do with getting older. Although for some not. For some, you know, this is something that happens in the 20s, in their 20s. But you are going to have a kid.
That's right.
And it's going to happen very soon. We're only, like, a couple weeks away at this point.
Maybe 2 weeks, maybe more, maybe less. Could be right now.
Could be, your phone could vibrate in a second there.
I could get the call.
Yeah.
I don't know where
is that starting to feel like I guess, I mean, has that been on your mind for a bit, where like your phone, you're like on edge because your phone could go off at any moment?
Not really. There's like a couple times where I've like, it kind of hits me, and it's like, oh, like this could happen like pretty much anytime. But it's weird because it's like, I don't even know what to expect, and there's so much that I just don't know about. But even like, let's say I get a text or a phone call in the next, in an hour, and it's like, hey, I'm starting to feel contractions or whatever, then I still know realistically we have probably a 24-hour wait before we even go to the hospital. It's not like in the movies where like the water breaks and then it's like, oh my God, and then we have to go to the hospital.
I was saying, I was thinking that I want it to be this whole movie scenario where like we're like training or something, or you're teaching class and I'm there and you're like, I got the call, and I'm like, you go, man. You go do it. And everyone cheers for you at the gym as you're heading out, and you're like, bye everybody, I'm going to have a kid.
No, it's not likely to be like that. So especially for the first.
Can we do that anyways though?
We could, totally. So
don't ruin it for me.
It's apparently like the water doesn't even break for the vast majority of women. There's just occasional scenarios where it happens, and so like, in terms of like when I get the call, I don't think I'll still, like, I'm definitely going to be like, oh my God, all right, it's going to happen. But it's not like it's happening imminently. It's like, okay, we still have a lot of time before the actual like active labor starts. So
you can get your clip and everything, and then
I can finish the line, get the clip. Maybe stop, grab some food.
All right, so before people start tuning out here, because this is a parkour show, the topic we actually want to talk about here, and I mentioned this to you the other day because it's something that I hadn't really asked you about, and it's something that I'm assuming people are going to probably not stop asking you about.
I've already got questions about this. I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to ask.
But it's do you want your kid to do parkour? Do you want your or kids as it might become? Yeah,
I've actually gotten this question a lot, but not even like a do you, like a question. Actually, it's not even really a question. It's more like, oh, your kid's gonna be the best at parkour. It's just like an assumption. It's like definitely gonna happen, and I don't have the expectation that they're going to be a parkour athlete, a parkourist, if you will.
I will.
And it's because that was my path in life, but I don't expect that from my kids. Why would I expect them to follow in my exact footsteps? Maybe they do choose to follow the same route, or like go into the same sport that I chose to do, but I definitely don't have any expectations around that. However, what I will say is that my kids, I will definitely encourage movement development with my kids to, and teach them the fundamentals of parkour. Maybe not explicitly, like this is a step fall, use one hand and the opposite, just like encourage climbing, encourage play, encourage navigating risk. Those are all good qualities of parkour, and probably to some degree I'm going to teach them like some fundamental skill, like parkour skills, because parkour, I firmly believe, is a really valuable vehicle of learning to navigate the world. So it exposes you to risk and learning how to control it. It also teaches you how to be a functional human being. I don't want my kids to grow up and not know how to swing on monkey bars, which we actually, there's a lot of kids in the world who can't swing on monkey bars these days, and that's problematic. And
I can't imagine a childhood without monkey bars.
Yeah, and it's.
We had little rings at my school.
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah, like that's like such a fundamental movement pattern for humans, and we're now seeing generations of, like the newer generations of kids not actually physically able to do it. So I will not let my kids grow up without that. Even if they're not like, oh, I don't want to do monkey bars today. It's like, no, you're going to do it, you know?
So this kind of aligns with what I know I've heard you say in the past, where you kind of had this vision for parkour as it relates to being normalized, and that it's something that, like, if you do parkour or if someone mentions it, that instead of it being like, oh yeah, The Office, or like I've never tried that, or it's crazy, it's just something that a person will say, oh yeah, we did that as part of like PE classes when I was in elementary school.
Yeah, I mean, you talk to any adult and be like, hey, what sports did you do growing up? They're like, oh, soccer, or gymnastics, or basketball, or hockey.
Or they tried like the, assortment of them in
exactly.
In school.
My vision for the future is that parkour is just one of those things, which means it's a little bit less special, but it means that way more people have been exposed to it, which that's a very important thing for parkour's development. We don't want to be in a scenario where 20 years from now, somebody says, I do parkour, and they're like, what? That's crazy, That's probably a bad sign, because that means parkour hasn't evolved to the point where it's more accepted by society in the way that we would hope that it would eventually become. It's like somebody saying like, oh yeah, I skate, or I ride a skateboard, right? It's like, do you is that weird to hear somebody say that? Yeah. No, it's not.
I mean, maybe if they're like of a certain demographic, like if they're in their 50s, yeah, it might be a bit.
Sure. If they're currently doing it at 50 years old, but if they grew up doing it, and maybe they don't do it anymore, that's such a normal experience, right? So that's the vision, is parkour become normalized. But yeah, it's exactly like I would expect that, and again, like I don't have the expectation that my child is going to do parkour and get to a high level. That's not at all the expectation. It's just like going to learn some fundamental skills, because that's going to help you navigate the world. Probably going to help you with other sports or activities that you do as well, because it's such a foundational movement practice. And I don't know, my kids might not even be interested in doing sport beyond a certain age or level. So they're ultimately their own people. And I want to encourage the development on whatever they are most interested in. But they're not getting away without doing at least like some fundamental movements.
Yeah. So in the event that they do take an interest in parkour, and we kind of had a little bit of pre-talk about this, you have an interesting take, and I guess I'll say like it's your take right now.
Yeah, it could
and
change.
It change, but so if you, assuming like 15, 20 years from now, when your kid is a fully grown human being and capable of high level parkour, what are your feelings if they want to pursue that?
I have a very mixed feeling on this, and it's because parkour taken to the highest level is a very risky activity. You could argue all you want all day that like, oh, actually parkour is less risky than soccer because there's no other people interacting with you. That may be true for the vast majority of parkour, but at the highest level, if you are doing roof gaps, parking garage descents, or ascents, or anything dealing with height, you're definitely exposing yourself to a higher level of risk than running on a soccer pitch. You know what I mean? Like getting slide tackled. Okay, yeah, you might tear your ACL or something like that, but you're not dealing with falling from height. So on the one hand, I want my kids to be capable actors in the world, being able to navigate risk, assess risk, and control it. But on the other hand, it's like, I don't know, like I used this analogy before when we were talking, which is if my kid gets into climbing and they're like, cool, I really like climbing. They start off in maybe a bouldering gym. They start getting quite good. They start liking climbing on rock outside. And then one day they're like, you know what, I'm going to start free soloing. And then they try to do El Capitan and like going towards like the Alex Honnold route. Alex Honnold's still alive. A lot of free soloers are not. And so, again, it's like climbing taken to the most extreme becomes extremely risky. And I think parkour has, to a similar degree. Now, there's less people in parkour who have passed away from practicing than free soloists. But that's also because parkour is a much smaller activity. And so there's definitely a smaller pool of people who are willing to pursue that level of risk. So naturally speaking, it's just going to be lesser fatalities. So this is a really, really difficult question, especially as a leader and a coach in parkour, where I want to encourage kids to develop physically, learn the skills, do harder, more difficult things, pursue risk, but navigate it carefully. It's a conundrum I find in my mind, because how far do I want them to take it? And I think the same for my own children is how far do I want them to take whatever pursuit? Yeah.
I've heard athletes kind of speak about risk in parkour and like their friends. Like I think even Kai Willis, back when he was still active in parkour, was talking about how he watches people close to him that he trains with like try these like very risky things, and it seemingly, I can't remember exactly what he was saying, but essentially it's like getting to him, and I've actually never, like I've had training partners like my own age, try risky things, but if they're doing it, I'm so confident that they're okay. If they're, say, doing a roof gap or, something where there's a lot of exposure to risk, to not just risk of like you might fall on your butt, it's you might, if you fall, if something goes off and if you fall, this drop is going to be life-altering, if not life-ending. Yeah. And I actually haven't been around too many. I can't recall being around someone where I didn't feel like they were going to be just fine doing it, right? However, I haven't got to that point with like someone who's like a kid at the gym. Like if I think of kids that are on the youth team right now and think about if so right now, for example, we are filming, clips for them, trying to get them into the culture of like making videos, right? And if we fast forward maybe like 5 years from now for some of them, in the trajectory they're headed into and what they like have to look up to, they could be trying some of these like crazy risky things if they're sticking with it. And I don't know what that's going to feel like. Like it's just sort of like we'll find out. I don't have the sense where like I feel like I need to stop them or protect them. In some ways, I'm like excited because a big part of the excitement of parkour for me is the big risk that are overcome, and so it is like I can understand being torn, particularly like I guess if it's your own child that you're thinking of. yeah, it's pretty wild concept to just depending on where you're sitting, right?
Yeah, well, there's former youth team kids who are now adults. They're not kids anymore, who have grown, and we've talked about them before, but they've grown to be doing these really, really high level things. And I actually don't feel particularly nervous for them because I know how skilled and competent they are.
We're thinking about like Jules, Bodie. Yeah. But also like their styles aren't.
Jules doesn't have a crazy like high risk style. I mean, okay.
It is in the act that like, okay, if he doesn't finish rotating this flip, he can land on his head and probably get concussed. But that's kind of like the extent of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're like sitting here like, oh, it's just a concussion. That's still a big deal, but it's not the same as we may never see this person again because they fell off of like a 3-story building or something.
Yeah. But like Bodie right now is like pursuing big dive fronts. And there's...
See, he said that, I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah. There's actually one by my house that he's looking at. I showed it to him. It is real meaty. And it's awesome. It's like a really cool one. And but I have the utmost faith in his ability because I've known him for so long and I know how good he is with this. And there's preps too that he could do to kind of work up to it. So, but yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know how different it's gonna be. Like, again, it's not. I haven't been around them doing roof gaps or doing anything else really high risk. So I'm torn on it, right? Like when I know somebody and I know their ability, it's usually the case that I'm supportive of their action. There have been occasions where I've been very nervous being around something that's higher risk, but for the most part, I'm very confident in my peers and my friends, their abilities to overcome the risks because of their skill level and because of their capability. But yeah, I mean, like you said, like parkour is not risky. It's there's definitely danger involved. So I don't know. It's hard to talk about because we view this very much from the lens of parkour, and I'm going to bring up another sport, but like skiing. Skiing can be incredibly dangerous, especially backcountry skiing where there's like avalanche risk. And if you're not trained appropriately, you're going to die. Like, it's going to happen. It'll probably catch up to you because if you ski on the wrong spot and you're just not quite prepared enough, it's going to end for you. So, and do I want my kids growing up skiing? Yeah, I do, because I like skiing. It's a fun family activity. Are they going to get more and more into skiing and then want to go backcountry and then take higher levels of risk? Maybe. And that's where I might start to get more and more concerned as a parent. But I don't know. I'm still very new to this. I'm not even technically a parent yet, so I don't even know the way I'm going to feel, I don't know, in 2 weeks, let alone 15, 20 years or longer. So I guess we'll have to see when that day comes. But it is something that I've been wrestling with, which is I definitely want my kids exposed to risk because the research shows that risk is definitely important for their development. And I want them to be able to manage their anxiety in the world, right? Like if they're, I don't know, just anything, any physical scenario they find themselves in, I'd rather them be strong and capable than weak and scared.
Yeah. It's funny, I'm reminded of a parent-kid duo, and I think of them as a duo because they're always together when they're around the gym or coming out to a jam. Is Chris and his dad Mike. And last summer, I was doing precision jump at Ironworks. In this precision jump, you're landing on a relatively thin wall, and on the other side of the wall surely is a drop that you're not gonna survive with, at least like breaking something, if at all, right? Like I think you probably survive it, assuming you land on your feet, but you probably break something.
Unless you, I don't think you would. I don't think you would die from it. It's possible too, I guess, if you land in the wrong way, but yeah, it's not going to be a friendly fall to your body. You're going to hurt yourself.
So we're doing this jump, and we started doing it on a lower level, and then Chris got it, because at first it was like, can he make the distance? Because this is a 13-year-old kid, so he can't jump as far as I can. And for me, when I'm doing it, it's not can I make the distance, it's can I hold back enough of the power to stick it without, going off the edge. We both end up doing it. Mike's filming the whole time, right? And after he talked to me, he like pulled me aside, and he was like, I don't know if I like that one. Like that was a bit like much for me. And I was like, oh, because I was coming from this experience where a couple of things were happening that made me feel totally safe with Chris doing it. One was that he barely had the power to make it. And two was that he has this freaky squat mobility.
Yeah, he's got really good mobility.
I actually made a post about it where like his head doesn't even have to go over the edge. Like he's very upright in his squat. And so for him to land and stick it, he's not even exposed to as much risk as I am, where I actually have to like lean forward to stay on the wall. Me explaining that to Mike didn't really help at all. But it was just an interesting comparison there, because again, I felt safe because I felt like Chris was safe because of all this information I had about his athleticism, whereas Dad's just watching us both try to jump to this wall over this drop where if either of us overshoot it, it's game over. And Mike is usually someone who is encouraging of Chris, but almost in like a neg sort of way. So like if Chris isn't committing to something that's like less risky, he's more likely to like neg him. And this is one where like he wasn't doing that. There's another parent that comes to mind that's on the other end of the spectrum, which is Carson's dad. So some parkour nerds listening might know Carson Street as a speed competitor in SPL 1, who the commentators were going crazy about when he did the gap jump in like Speed Course 1. But anyways, Carson is like 19 now, and his dad Dustin used to like always be bringing him to the gym. So they were another duo, and Carson scares coaches. Like Carson,
oh my God,
Carson makes coaches feel uncomfortable with how kind of like reckless he is. And Dustin was always just unfazed. Like I'd seen Carson take some nasty hits, like fall onto his side and get up and like groaning and stuff. And his dad would always just no sell the whole experience. Be like, you're fine. And I'd be the coach, like concerned, like I don't think your kid's fine. He ended up always being fine, but he has this crazy. Carson has this crazy ability of being fine, even when he takes some of like the craziest falls. But I almost wonder what it would take for like for Dustin to actually be concerned.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe more like height stuff, because I mean Carson is primarily trains in the gym, so there's only so much risk he's actually exposed to. Whereas if he was doing a jump outside and that Dustin was there to watch, maybe it would be a different story.
I would almost be afraid to take Carson, like to introduce him to the world of descents, for example, or anything. Because I think he'd be very willing.
Yeah.
And he when I coach him nowadays, it actually gets to this point where like he just asks me, like, how bad is this? Like, he did the other day. Like, he no one in class was willing to do anything more than a prep of this this plyo, and he just asked me, like, if my feet hit the wall and I fall on my back, how bad is it going to be? Like, that's what, because he's just willing to, like, lock in and commit to almost any level of pain, assuming, like, it's not going to be, I guess, I don't know, too serious. I don't know. It's I've just seen him fall so many times that not have to go to the hospital.
So Carson snowboards, and whenever I talk to him about the mountain, he's like, "Oh yeah, I just point it straight and just take it," and it's like he just has this weird ability to just like head forward and just go, and it reflects in pretty much everything he does, but it reflects in his like speed course runs. So it's just like head forward, just run at it, and he'll be able to react and get himself out of whatever scenario he finds himself in. And he does the same with snowboarding. It's just, point it straight and just go. And then, don't try to turn and slow down. Just head forward.
Yeah. And the thing about his parkour now too, is like, he has technique.
Oh yeah.
Like he has technique. He does some things like very, very nicely. So we're not talking about, like, we're talking about a kid that has been doing parkour for almost a decade now.
Over a decade, I think.
Is that, no, because then he would have started like when the gym opened.
He started before the gym opened, I think.
Oh, you're right, because he was doing like lessons at a gymnastics gym or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's basically grown up doing parkour a couple times a week.
Yeah.
Mostly in gyms. So he has technique from that. So it's not like he's just all out reckless and has what we don't like to see. You never like to see the guy show up to like the first jam and trying to hit jumps that the people that have been doing it for 10 years are trying to do.
Yeah.
He's not that guy.
Yeah.
He could be in another sport though if you just drop him in.
Yeah.
I'll try anything.
I always found that he would be probably really, really great if he just worked on some strength. Mm-hmm. If he filled some of that frame up with muscle.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, there's still potentially time. But anyways, the next thing we kind of wanted to talk about here, along with the topic of parkour and parenthood and parkour children as it is like the kind of different situations that we're seeing when someone of influence in parkour has a kid. Mm-hmm. So a couple ones we mentioned, like Jason Paul is a father, has been for some years now. Mm-hmm. Bart van der Linden is a father. Paul Darnell has been a father for a minute. Gabe Nunez has been a father for a minute. Rafe Kelly.
Jesse LaFleur.
Jesse LaFleur is kind of a newer one. But I guess
similar to Jason.
Yeah, I guess what I was wondering, because we just had this talk about you want your kids to do some parkour, but like it's not really, you're not dead set on them really pursuing it as people assume, right? And so I think I can't help but have this assumption sometimes, particularly when people are very public on social media with, top athletes, right? These are some of the people we just mentioned, like Bart and Jason Paul were at one time and still very much are like top athletes in the sport. When they have kids, I think people are more likely to assume that like, oh, this kid's going to be a prodigy. And so the thing I was trying to wonder, and I had asked you this the other day, is like, can you think of any figure in parkour who has a kid that is kind of becoming a prodigy?
Okay, so there's two to come to mind. Bart's kid, I know, does parkour, or at least did parkour for a while. I don't know if he's still continuing to pursue it. Actually, I haven't really seen much from Bart at all recently. So, yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen scenarios where he's doing parkour things, trying to stick landings, doing it with good quality landings. Looks like he's turned into I don't want to use the term prodigy because it's just like the reality is like there's only so much that you can see from social media. But it's not like the kid has an Instagram and he's posting.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I guess it's like something that happens in other sports. Like I watched like the David Beckham documentary, and his dad his dad wasn't like the best soccer player, but his dad was a soccer player, and his dad got him playing soccer like crazy early.
Yeah.
And it was just like grooming him to be excellent.
That's very common in soccer is the early specialization route, which is you got to start like by the age of 3 or else you can't make it as a soccer player, which there's conflicting evidence for, but that's generally like the culture of soccer is get them started young. But yeah, like another person that comes to mind is actually Rafe. His son is getting quite good at parkour, and it doesn't seem like Rafe is even really like pushing him to do a lot of parkour. In fact, a lot of it's more just kind of exploratory and free. Like, okay, yeah, like let's try to climb this thing, or you want to learn this specific skill? Cool, I'll help you learn this skill. But the kid is really strong and quite capable, and he's quite young. I think he's 8. So maybe 9. So yeah, I don't know. If he sticks around for another 10 years, he's probably going to be incredibly good at parkour.
Yeah, I remember like I mentioned like Paul Darnell, founder of Tempest Freerunning. When he had a kid, there were, I recall, like Instagram posts of the kid like doing parkour-esque things, like and then it kind of started. It's interesting because I think a lot of these. I mean, we're mainly talking about fathers right now, who are very into it. Seemingly have this idea that it's going to be like a David Beckham situation, right? And I'm imagining that they don't have it in them to do, which is for the best, I'm going to say, to do what David Beckham's father did, which is like really force it on them.
Right.
You know.
Or like another person that comes to mind is Nyjah Houston.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Or Tiger Woods. Yeah, like it was like you're gonna be a skateboarder or you're gonna be a golfer or whatever. But yeah, I don't know if I get that vibe from everyone who becomes a parent in parkour. I think maybe it happened a little bit with Paul, and I know like so Gabe, there was a video.
Gabe Nunez.
Yeah, Gabe Nunez. There was a video from, I can't remember which video it was, but it was like, it was showing a bunch of, like, I think it had like clips of like Lucy, clips of Sydney, and then it cut to a clip of his daughter who's like watching the video, and then she like gets up and starts doing parkour.
Yeah.
And so...
Oh, I remember this, yeah.
You remember that? So, yeah, it was like this cool... Like, the whole theme was like, oh, yeah, like, women seeing other women influences them to try or whatever. So, but I don't know if they're, like, pushing it on her. She probably is not even interested in parkour anymore, or maybe still is. Who knows?
Yeah. This happens in... and those two, Paul and Gabe, are stunt people.
Yeah.
And this is actually something I've noticed with a lot of stunt people in Vancouver, is that their kids, they get pushed into stunts, like, all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. It's just like they get them into a bit of parkour, they get into a bit of martial arts, and it's just like, hey, like, we have this in, and you're going to start, like, doubling kids, and then we'll see what happens from there.
The difference is there's not a lot of career opportunity in parkour, because it's mostly a hobby, but there is career opportunity in the stunt world. So there's a big difference there, because it's almost like, okay, I'm going to train you to have skills that you can use in the future for a career path. Whereas if you're just teaching them parkour, they might be developing some skills, but are they going to have an actual career? Maybe in 20 years, there's going to be a more filled out industry with more potential for and I guess like the same could be said for like David Beckham and his dad, you know, or any of these other like top athletes who like, you know, David Beckham's dad was probably like, you're going to be a professional soccer player and you're going to make us millions of dollars as a family or whatever. So maybe that was the case with that. But that's just not the case with parkour.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing too. It's like, do I want to push my kid into parkour where there's no real career path for at the moment? I don't know. Probably not. I'd rather them just pick something that they like.
Yeah. And then I guess you could say like if they really like parkour, because it is this thing that you know, we kind of talk about. We brushed on this a bit in our last episode with you know, how impossible it is to make money off of like parkour videos, which is one of the things as an athlete. If you're trying to make money, like you gotta be an influencer or some sort of, or be in some sort of media to make money, and it's just crazy hard to do right now because of a lack of sponsors or brands or things that are willing to actually pay for you to produce that sort of thing. And so I always look at it right now as like, well, then if that's the case, anyone who's doing parkour at a high level right now, they need to be doing it for like self like interest and passion. It can't be about trying to make money, trying to monetize it, because that's just so crazy hard. And I think if that's a big part of like what is keeping someone into parkour, is like, oh, maybe I'll be able to go pro and make money off this, just like Dom Tomato, then they're probably going to quit because the likelihood of that happening is so low.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to bring up that whole conversation again.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you know, it's an interesting discussion, but it's also not. It's not. It's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. So there's another dad that we new dad that we didn't bring up yet, which is Kalen Chan.
Yeah.
And his current bit, and so he's someone where who knows what Kalen and Reagan are thinking, but they're at least starting to involve their kid in media with his doing a backflip in front of his kid every day until he compliments him on his backflip.
Yeah.
Is that I actually think it's really funny. I know it's probably, I think Lump Realm had like a meme about it, but I actually want him to keep doing it. I'm invested. I think and I don't even know if I'm, because I don't see it that often on my feed. I've seen a couple of them. I don't know how often it's that he's making that post, or if there's like another. Is it? I thought there was going to be time in between.
I think it's every day.
Okay, so maybe it's on an account, a separate account then that I'm not following.
It might be a story post.
Yeah, so I'm not seeing it all the time. I'm seeing it at the right frequency where it's funny to me because it's gonna take
a long time.
So like how long? I don't know. And what counts? What counts? Is it? Does the kid have to
verbalize it?
Have to say like nice backflip, or is it just like, if he gets a giggle or a laugh or something, is that enough? We'll find out. Tune into Kalen Chan's Instagram. It's a good way to make sure you're practicing your backflips every day.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. He's doing what the great Gary Vee tells everyone to do. He's documenting his day.
Is that documenting his day? I don't know if it is.
Well, it's like, would he be doing that every day if it weren't for social media, I guess is the question. Is it a chicken or an egg scenario?
I don't think so. I think he's doing it for social media because it's a specific thing of like, I'm doing this every day until my kid does this. Yeah. It's like a trend. It's like there's one video that shows up in my feed that is, it's like, I don't know, he's on like day 200 of me trying to overhead press the log. and it's the same log every single day. It's a big chunky thing, and he has to like lift it up, get it up to here, and he wants to overhead press it. And you could see, actually, if you go back to day one, he could barely get it up, and he drops it like to just his like thighs. And now, like, I don't know what day he's on, but now he's starting to get it up to here, where he's starting to be able to begin the press, but then he loses it. So it's like, it's actually really cool to watch the progress. Like, I don't follow him, but occasionally he'll pop up and I'll be like, oh, I wonder how he's doing. Like, and then one day I just went all the way back to day one, and I was like, oh, dang, he's actually come a long way. And a lot of people are really invested. They're like watching it and commenting like, oh my God, you're so close now. Anyway.
I feel
but
like
that's a social media trend. And I think that's what is generally what Kaylin and Reagan are doing, which is trying to do like one of these social media trend things.
I think even like the low effort ones where it's just like, okay, we got to get our clip today, and it's like, flip, nothing. Okay, I still think it's kind of funny. I'm not mad at it. Are you familiar with Squat Every Day? It's a YouTube.
No.
Okay. I think the guy's name is Ivan, and like he had this goal where like he wanted to, I think it's like 600 pounds or something, and he's like maybe 180, 190 pounds.
Okay.
Like, he's not like a massive dude, and I think the number is 600 that he wants to squat. He's on day like probably like 1500 and something.
Okay.
And occasionally YouTube will suggest his videos, and occasionally I'll watch it, because his videos are usually, all it is like him working out that day.
Okay.
And basically he maxes out every day.
Okay.
This is the concept.
And he's trying to get to 600 pounds?
I believe so. It's like something like 600 pounds, and it's a type of squat. Like it's like an Olympic, like ass to grass, kind of paused squat. Like he has a very specific, I think he details it sometimes in his videos, but it's just like a very specific type of squat, done and performed a certain way, with a crazy high amount of weight. And he's just started this thing of squat every day, and then he's actually become quite successful with it on YouTube. And every video is just like static shot of him, like he just edits, very, very easy editing, and then he does a voiceover, and he'll just be kind of talking about his day and stuff. And I think he's like a nurse, so he has to like fit in on weird hours. So, but I remember he did one video where he talked about that I happened to see, where he was talking about when he blew up, because it was like basically like no one watching these, and it was just like he said he started doing it just as like a diary, and then people just got into it because YouTube's a crazy place.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really love stories like that, where someone is doing something because it's interesting, right? That's kind of an interesting thing to try to do. It was like, oh, I'm gonna max out every single day until I reach this goal. And like, he's auto-regulant. So when you say max out, it's like, okay, it doesn't necessarily mean he's hitting the same weight every day. And like he'll have like fluctuations, right? And then it'll be like, oh, I PR'd, and then tanked for like days, and then like, work his way back up and PR again. So it's just this interesting kind of thing that he started just not necessarily to get any attention, and then like attention comes because it is interesting. I love
you need to
stories like that.
You need to see the guy trying to overpress.
I guess that when you're talking about it, I'm like, I gotta see this guy.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, I wish it'd be cool if like a story like this happened in parkour, because I think of stuff like Egg has like flip every day, and I think there's some other daily challenges. But like the thing that doesn't interest me about daily posts is sometimes it just seems like someone will make a daily account, and then it's like, here I am like balancing on a rail today, and it's well, that's not as
Well,
I guess you got it in.
It's like a daily diary, but
Yeah.
it's still not interesting because it's like, okay, you're doing the bare minimum to like make sure you get the post in. Otherwise you lost your streak.
Yeah. And I don't know how much of that is actually wanting to do it to get attention versus like, oh, this is a visual diary for myself, and you can easily basically scroll back through the entries because it's different than keeping like a written thing.
Yeah.
Right. Written almost is more like time consuming in a way because like you'd have to be like, oh, I did, writing out I did this today versus looking back at the videos and like you can see progression. So I get all that. And the platform actually lends itself quite well for that as well. But it is really cool if someone actually starts that process with like a goal.
I was about to say there's no goal typically. Like the goal is the habit, which is good, and that's a good thing, right? Is the goal is the habit that means you're training every day or you're trying to improve yourself in some capacity every day. But it's more interesting from a viewer perspective to see what you're trying to work towards and watch the process of you working towards that. So if it was like I don't know, I think of like maybe some of the like, I mean, a lot of the youth team kids are really close to it, but like bar kip. Bar kip is like notoriously difficult to learn, especially when you don't have as much strength. And so it's like, I don't know, day 100 of trying to get the bar kip or something, like.
Well, you could also do it with like a Kong pre.
Yeah, like a very specific challenge.
Like we have the IMAX 2 walls set up in the gym, and someone could be like, oh, I want to Kong pre that, and like start as like nowhere close, but I'm just going to work on it every day. And it could be like every day trying to do it, or it could be like probably the more smart approach, which is like there's some Kong work being done every day that gets documented. Yeah, I'd tune in for that.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you were going to do it.
No. I don't know.
That's a good idea though. It's not necessarily the IMAX concrete, but just like doing like.
Yeah, I'm curious if anyone out there has tried this and if they go, because the thing is, it also needs to be a goal that's like, for it to be intriguing enough, there needs to be like some doubt that this is attainable, like that this person is crazy,
like the log,
the log, or the guy, or the squat every day. Like he's
how heavy is he going?
I think he's in the 400s,
okay,
like maybe like high 400s now or something. Yeah, and I think he started in the 200s.
Oh wow!
So it's just wild. Yeah.
That's cool.
But it's progressive overload, Like like in these two scenarios, it's progressive overload, and so there's not a whole lot of variables other than like recovery and everything. But I think in both of their cases, they probably just think, well, other people got to this by progressive overload. If I just try every day and manage to not get hurt, then I'll get closer.
Yeah,
because the squat every day guy, he does like that. He does a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah,
like it's not just him. It is him squatting every day, but that's not all he does, right? But he does lift every single day, right? And it's weird because like the people think that's bad for you, but it's like you actually get conditioned to it. And if you're auto-regulating it intelligently enough, then you don't get hurt. And you can probably find a way to do the same thing with parkour, where it's just like you're jumping every day and doing some sort of maximal effort. But if you're smart enough about it, you won't get hurt. And if you don't get hurt and you continue the behavior every day, maybe you do eventually achieve the goal.
Yeah.
I feel like someone who would have done this, who could still do it, is Caleb Iliano.
It's so funny that you mentioned that because I was literally thinking about that jump in Orlando that he, like, it's notorious for, like years ago, it's like a jump plyo, like it's a jump up to a wall and then a plyo up to a higher wall.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
He got it, right?
Yeah, he got it. And like Gareth and Jimmy, they all did it. And there's like a bunch of fails. It's like literally, they had a video, Real House had a video that was called Doing Jumps We Can't or something like that. And it was just a bunch of fails. And you could see the progress over time, and it was really interesting because it was very similar to the same idea, but it was just more like compilation style.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, I think anybody could do it, and I was just thinking like, oh, maybe you can do it with dynos, like dyno on the dyno ladder, like dynoing every day until I could dyno 70 inches or something, right? Like something, like set a high goal and then try to achieve it.
Yeah, because what's likely to happen is the same thing that I mentioned with the squat everyday guys, that you're going to have like low days, and I think you need to know a certain amount about training to accept that as part of the journey, part of it. Okay, it's like the whole like progression's not linear thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Maybe one of our listeners this may have sparked an idea.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to dyno every day.
Yeah, it's like there has to be a goal that you just really want to devote a chunk of your time every day to. And, when you see someone get to like day 1,000 or more, it's like, wow, they really wanted this, So.
Yeah. 1,000 days of doing something, that's like a huge commitment.
Yeah. That's over, it's almost 3 years.
Yeah. Interesting.
You think of a challenge, like I can think of for Resilient, the final challenge. I know that I did over 200 fails of the jump, right? Like over 200 tries. So same thing, like trying to do jumps we can't. Like, my sessions were very far apart, but a similar process where I was like, okay, if I just keep going, surely elements of it are going to get easier and there's going to be less inhibition. I'll make progress, and it did work, but I wasn't going there every day.
No, there's a big difference.
It didn't get to that. Maybe I would have got it sooner if I went every day, though.
Yeah, exactly.
It just didn't seem like that was a requirement.
Yeah. Well, there's also other factors, like doing parkour outside there's like weather limitations, right?
Yeah, and so part of this would have to be like you would have to find other ways to train for it that count, which kind of like it's not the same as the guy picking up the log.
No, the log, like you see it and it's like, it looks kind of damp today,
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't matter, he's still trying.
Yeah.
It's always the log. It's never anything else. But I think he also lifts weights and stuff like that. It's not like he only does it,
but he's still trying to do the feat every single day.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that was a pretty good.
We deviated a lot, actually.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. So good talk. I liked it. It was fun.
And
we should do it again sometime.
Yeah. Actually, this might interest some of our viewers. Is so I'm assuming you're going to be taking a break from STS.
Yeah, probably will be.
Yeah. So next week might be our last one together
for a little while.
And then I'm gonna try to keep this thing going.
Okay.
With some alternating guests.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you are a dedicated listener, every Sunday we're gonna. It's one of those challenges, It's every Sunday we gotta have a podcast up.
Yeah. Doing podcasts every Sunday until somebody comments.
There's not really an end goal. It's kind of like one of those parkour everyday.
Yeah, it's a habit. It's a habit we're trying to cultivate. But yeah, I guess we'll have one more episode together next week, and we'll or my baby comes early.
Yeah.
And we don't have one next week, but we'll see. Anyway, well, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll have one more conversation next week. So hopefully, that's it. That's the end. Goodbye.